Good morning. Welcome back to the Kilachari Torah Halacha review for Thursday, the 31st of December. We finished talking about the idea of making a siyum yesterday. So the next section in the book here in the Sefer, halachically speaking, has to deal with various festivals and holidays around the year. There's a section on Hanukkah, which we did recently. There's Purim and Pesach, so we'll hold off on those until we're a little bit closer to those holidays. Not that we're so far away. You should take note. We're about just about 8 weeks away from Purim, which means we're about 12 weeks away from Pesach. So those are coming rushing up to meet us much sooner than perhaps we expect. So we will get to those in due time. Let's take a little bit of time now and talk about some of the next section, which are very practical halachas that we actually have dealt with in some of our other shiurim, some of our other learning sessions in this fall, summer and fall. But we'll just review them because it never hurts to go over. The sages in Tractate Chulin speak about the idea of placing meat and dairy foods on the same table. Obviously, we know we're not allowed to eat them at the same time, not allowed to consume them at the same time, the same meal. That's a Torah prohibition. But what about the idea of placing them both on the table at the same time? I'm not going to eat them. I'm not going to cook them because you don't cook at the table. Generally speaking, you cook in the kitchen. But what about having meat and dairy foods on the same table? It could be the case that someone would absent-mindedly eat both foods, meat and dairy. So the sages extended the prohibition to food that was even cooked with meat or dairy. Those should not be on the same table at the same time. Here are the conditions and the various situations that arise. If you're eating at a long table where you cannot reach the other type of food, let's say it's a communal dining table in a dormitory or a banquet hall, something like that, it is permitted to place meat and dairy on one table, one at one end, one at the other end. You're permitted to place a dairy utensil on the table while eating meat and vice versa. Even if you're sitting alone at the table, both types of food may not be may not be placed on the table. If there are others eating at the same table who are connected to each other in some way, they should not eat meat and dairy because it's possible, it's tempting that someone could taste from somebody else's food. So one person is enjoying her burger and sitting across the table talking to a friend who's munching down on some poutine, which has cheese in it. So says, "Oh, those fries look so good. Let me just borrow one from you for a minute here," and takes some French fries with a little cheese on them in the middle of a burger. You don't want to do that. One who is finished eating meat or dairy and eating parve food may keep the remaining dairy or meat food on the table. What should you do in these situations and where it's possible that two people would borrow something, taste something as it were, from each other's plates? Place a sign, place some kind of an obvious symbol. It's called a heker. It reminds you that there's something that this is an out of the ordinary situation, and people should not taste from each other's plates. A utensil that's not ordinarily on the table can be used as such a reminder, such an indicator. A pot, if you want to, even if you want to use it during the meal. Food may also be such a symbol, such a sign, if it's not being used at the meal. Some say a soda bottle or glassware should not be used because it is normally on the table. It's not sufficient to remind you. You'll use it in the course of the meal anyway. If you always use a placemat at your meals, it's questionable if that can also be your reminder, your sign. If you use different colored placemats, one color for dairy, one color for meat, then placemats can be used. A two-sided placemat can also do this job. If one person uses a tablecloth or a placemat, the other person folds back the tablecloth and just eats directly on the table, that's also enough of a sign. The reminder, the sign on the table, is only effective if both people know about it and why it's there. Otherwise, it's meaningless. It's supposed to remind you. A picnic is usually a time when there is a closeness between the people who are eating together. Therefore, you have to have a sign there if some people are eating meat and some people are eating dairy. Because at a picnic, people are in fact likely to taste each other's foods. Okay, couple of more points about that. We will finish this off tomorrow. Just remind you that since tomorrow is a stat holiday, if we were davening in shul, we would be davening at 8 o'clock rather than our usual 7 o'clock a.m. minyan. So keep that in mind as you daven wherever you happen to be. Have a good day. Please join us again tomorrow.